Hi, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to the latest edition of Maria and Fernando Talking Jersey. Certainly, New Jersey's premier advocate, Maria Rodriguez-Gregg, and New Jersey's premier journalist, Fernando Uribe, of course, coming to you live here on this 26th of February. Folks, hope you all had a good week. It's great to see some nice warm weather, the snow melting, at least up here by me. And March 1st is on Monday, and hopefully warmer days are ahead. Maria, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm fired up today. And you know what? I'm going to make sure I have a nice sip here because I have a lot to say today.
No boy.
And you know, folks, let's be real about something here. And, you know, it's an election year here in New Jersey. And, you know, I don't want to sound pompous or arrogant or braggadocious, which I can be. And that's okay. That's part of my brand. But one of the things I'm really insistent on, folks, is being truthful. And here's some truth that's going to be really uncomfortable and even inconvenient for a lot of people in New Jersey. And I'm going to call out some people here tonight because I think it's important to sort of put everyone in perspective. And here's a little bit of Hudson County in me. It's time to check some of y'all. Okay, because let's start off with operatives that operate, you know, within both parties in New Jersey. There are a lot of Republican and Democratic operatives that seem to sort of inflate their own importance. And they seem to sort of minimize the contributions of people that are making a point to take time out of their schedule to do shows such as this. So I'm not going to speak for my lovely co-host here because she has a lot to say as well. And you know what? I don't have to defend her because she does a great job in doing that. But I'm going to defend what I do on a daily basis because let me tell you something. You know, yeah, I ran for state assembly 10 years ago. Yeah, I didn't win. Okay, I tried. All right. Unlike my amazing co-host, who won 2 elections, okay, as, you know, into the state assembly, all right, guess what? We both know what it's like to roll up our sleeves. We both know what it's like to be in the wars, in the trenches, whether it's being the chair of your local YR chapter, which I was for 5 years, for being involved in campaigns, for volunteering my time. And you know what? I get it. Maybe elected office wasn't for me. So I stopped pursuing that. And what I decided to do was continue in academia and now in journalism. And in the last 4 years, folks, you know what? I've worked really hard to put on responsible content to share with my audience about what you need to know. And when someone like myself and my amazing co-host are being dismissed, that, you know what? You do so at your own peril. But I promise you that if you continue doing this, number one, you're not going to really get anywhere. And number two, if you're trying to win elections, and folks, let's be very clear. All right. A lot of conservatives watch this program on a biweekly basis. A lot of conservatives watch my other programming. And some conservatives will say, well, Fernando's not really a conservative. Folks, I'm right here. It's not about grades or it's about, you know, who's blacker, who's browner, who's whiter. Folks, it's not about that. It's about getting the message out. And you know what? I am to be taken seriously. My co-host is to be taken seriously. You know why? Because we've been through the experiences. We've been through everything. And when we have operatives reaching out to us, because I don't need to reach out to people, but when I have operatives reaching out to me saying that I'm maybe a little cruel or a little punitive on candidates, whether it be the governor or whether it be his Republican challengers, guess what? That's my job to do that. But I'm also fair. Okay? I'm fair as hell. And if anyone can ever accuse me of not being fair, then point it out to me. But I promise you, you're not going to be able to do that. And it pisses me off to no end, folks. And I'm going to try to keep this PG here, okay, on a Friday. All right. But it pisses me off to no end when I see myself and Maria Rodriguez-Gregg either being minimized or being dismissed. Folks, we know more than a lot of operatives combined in New Jersey in both parties. So when you reach out to us and you want our opinion, I'm going to give it to you. Folks, I'm half Cuban. If there's anything I love to do, give me an opinion that's like breathing for me. Okay. And I'm going to do that. Now, whether you want it or not, that's not my, you know, I really don't care about that. I'm going to share it whenever possible. But I'll be fair, I'll be an adult, and I'll be judicious. But one thing I'm not is someone that's overly critical or maybe insensitive to a campaign. I'm not that. If anything, it's operatives that get easily triggered because someone like me, who's an award-winning journalist, is going to have an opinion. And guess what? I'm entitled to do that. That's part of my job. Okay? I'm an educator by day, but I'm also a journalist by night. And guess what? Part of my job is to tell you not what to think, but what I think, and then you make your own decision. And I don't know about you folks, during this election season, operatives up and down the state, take us seriously, because if you don't, trust me, it's going to come back to bite you, you know where. Maria, I'll give you the floor.
That was a lot to say. You know what? And I think, for those that are watching, part of why there was that long monologue full of angst, and rightfully so, was somebody did contact you to say that I guess you weren't highlighting a candidate enough in a very positive way, or you weren't very positive about a particular candidate, which is fine. I think at the end of the day, we're not propagandists. We are trying to give our perspective that's fair on races in New Jersey, a lot of political stuff in New Jersey and nationally as well. We've touched on things that are of a national level. And so, I don't want to say that I am better or worse than any operative, but I think we both do bring a lot of value.
Yeah.
I've been involved in politics since 2003. I think a lot of people thought I came onto the scene shortly before I got elected. No, I've been volunteering since 2003. There are people that started out as volunteers like me that are, basically commissioners within Murphy's administration currently, or have been elected to high level office on the Republican side, on all sides. I've been around since then. I've been a YR chair as well. I've been chair of Burlington County Young Republicans. I've been secretary of the county Republican organization. And I've worked very hard to get a lot of candidates locally elected and, throughout the state. As a volunteer. So I understand grassroots advocacy. I understand all of that. And as well as my campaign, I got elected. I had to fundraise and I've helped with others. I've won both my races. I've been primaried, Tea Party, and it wasn't very competitive. I mean, we certainly did very well. Clearly I got elected twice, but we do bring value and experience, and we do bring insight into our own community. As Latinos. And so, I think that there are a lot of young people that are very eager and hungry, and that's great. But I think you also have to be open to other people that want to contribute. At the end of the day, every vote counts. And you, especially with a race that's coming up with Murphy, who's running for governor. I mean, even Tom Moran highlighted all the ways in which Murphy, had negative marks against him. I mean, he specifically wrote all of the negative things that could be used against Murphy in the gubernatorial race, yet nothing's sticking right now. He's still polling very, very high, and that could easily change. But that does create an uphill battle for, the candidates, the Republican candidates. And there's an excellent pool. Obviously, I've worked with Jack Ciattarelli. He was my colleague, and he's clearly considered the front runner. And there you have this wonderful pool of candidates. And so I think we've tried to be very fair that it's going to be an uphill battle, that it's not going to be an easy race as of right now. It's not a slam dunk. And while history hasn't been in the Democrats' favor, this is one of those years with the pandemic where something can change. You never know. You honestly never know. And you have to run every race like you're going to lose. I mean, we've seen it in the past. Mary Pat Angelini, Senator Beck, Assemblywoman Angelini, Senator Beck, Assemblywoman Casagrande, they thought they had it. And I really respected these women. I really enjoyed working with them, but they thought they had that race, and right down the line, they lost it right at the finish line. And so you have to always be prepared.
Listen, you're absolutely right. And again, it sort of goes back to how operatives from both parties, I think, view journalists or people that are doing streaming shows like this. There aren't many throughout New Jersey that are doing what you and I are doing, Maria. And what bothers me again, I don't want to be overly punitive with the NJGOP, but this is a party that if they're really serious about picking up seats this legislative cycle and also trying to have Ciattarelli, win the gubernatorial election, I'm sorry, they need to reach out more. And we've talked about it off the air. Listen, I'm the first one to ever denounce identity politics. I hate the fixation on it. But talking about what's affecting minority communities, specifically Hispanics, Latinos, Latinas, I'm sorry, the NJGOP has not done a good job. And you know what? There's nothing to brag about when it comes to operatives within the organization. Now, again, I'm not campaigning to be an operative or an advocate or a surrogate, But let's call it, let's be real about it. Like NJGOP has nothing to brag about. And if they're going to continue doing these small little events and not reaching out to like major Hispanic organizations, listen, whether it's the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, right? They should be, listen, the NJGOP should be doing something with Carlos Medina and Luis de la Hoz almost weekly to talk and reach out to Hispanic business owners, the Latino Action Network, okay, the Latino Index. Now, I'm not giving a shameless plug just because I was on the top 100 list, but these are things that—
There's also South Jersey. There's the Puerto Rican Association down in South Jersey. There are many different organizations. There are churches. There are so many coalitions that they can reach out to. The Democrats aren't doing, they're not doing it either. That's one of the things, I've spoken to a lot of leaders in the Latino community, and they've specifically said that they feel completely slighted by both parties. So if the Republicans really want to make up the numbers, and it's a strategic move. I mean, right now, Democrats completely out-register Republicans and unaffiliated. There are more registered Democrat voters than unaffiliated and Republicans. And
it's a big margin.
Exactly. And so you're going to need that unaffiliated, as a Republican candidate, if you want to win, you're going to need the unaffiliateds. You're absolutely going to need to capture that. And there are a lot of there are a lot of Latino unaffiliated voters. That's a very big voting block. The Asian community, Black community, you're going to have to really reach out to those non-traditional communities that may end up voting your way. And, what's really interesting is in New Jersey, there was an uptick in this presidential election of Latinos voting Republican. Yeah. And it's partly because they don't believe that the Democrats are representing their issues and their needs. You and I have talked about this before. The Latino community is not homogenous. There are many different groups within the Latino community. The largest ethnicity within New Jersey is Puerto Ricans, followed by Dominican, Cubans, and then you have different percentages of South American, and then Mexican. And, when it comes to us as voters, we're legal. I think there's this assumption that we're all illegal voters. The majority are legal citizens and voters, So, I mean, there's a real opportunity there to capitalize. And again, if they want to win, they're going to have to do better when it comes to outreach. Either party, but specifically Republicans, to make up those numbers.
No, absolutely. And again, and we'll get to our lineup here tonight for everyone tuning in, folks, here on StreamYard. Again, we appreciate you making this part of your Friday evening. But again, Hispanic outreach is important. Like you mentioned, the idea, listen, folks, it's March 1st on Monday. Okay. There isn't an eternity. You might think, oh, it's still months away from November. Folks, March 1st is Monday. Okay. And these are things that both parties should have been doing yesterday. And more so, again, the NJGOP, because they're the ones that are at a stark disadvantage. You just mentioned, Maria, again, voter registrations. Democrats outnumber Republicans, but more so, even unaffiliated people like myself, we need a reason to want to vote this November. We need a reason to want to go out and vote in person. It seems like hopefully we'll be able to do that instead of voting by mail. And right now, we're not getting that motivation, right? We're seeing businesses dying out. We're seeing, listen, the governor this week introduced the highest budget in New Jersey history. I think it was almost like $60 billion. I mean, obviously the governor is hoping for a big aid package from Washington. We don't know if that's going to come from the Biden administration. We don't know that. I mean, it's sort of maybe a little cavalier of the administration here in Trenton to think that Washington's going to help us out, but they have to help out everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be up to like operatives, and especially within the Republican Party. You want to win seats, you need to tell people what's wrong with New Jersey. It's not just about, Murphy's bad at this, Murphy's bad at that. We know he has favorables. We know he has unfavorables. But it's beyond that. It's about, okay, what policies are we going to put forth if we can win seats in the legislature and win the gubernatorial seat? I don't think they're doing that within the NJGOP. And at the end of the day, the one that's going to hurt the most is Ciattarelli, because most likely he'll be at the top of the ticket.
Yes, he will more than likely will be at the top of the ticket. There are a lot of candidates that are running in this primary, and a lot of them came in late. He's already been wrapping up all of the county lines. He has been gaining that support. He's had momentum. He was the first candidate to announce. So he's really been all over the state. So, I mean, listen, we're not trying to slight other candidates, but this is the reality. The reality is he's the front runner and more than likely will be the candidate to run against Governor Murphy.
No, he is.
And so because of that, that means, right? I mean, honestly, right now, and I'm sure they should be running in their minds a general election. So not so much focusing on the primary. Obviously, you need to get out. You don't want to leave any stone unturned, but you should also it seems like they are shifting focus towards Murphy. And he's been consistently attacking Murphy, trying to distinguish himself as to what issues, what solutions that he has that differ from Murphy's when you consider the pandemic, the economics, and that's a big issue too. I mean, there are a lot of people, specifically, and our community, that have been hurting from the pandemic financially, economically. Unemployment has gone up. We've been adversely affected, even just getting sick. So, I mean, this is something that does matter to us, and it's an issue that we do need somebody to really knock on our door, be in our community, be in our churches, and talk about.
Well, and this is one of the things too, though, Maria, and I'm glad that we're talking about it today because, again, it's not that many months away, and we both know, and especially for you, I mean, you've run for office, you've won. The attention span of New Jerseyans tends to be really fickle at this time of year, and even during the summer. So it seems like everyone has to rush right after Labor Day to get a platform out, and it's like that's not the way that. Again, if the GOP is serious about winning some seats. And there are some pockets of Jersey. There are some districts where, there are some winnable seats. Listen, where I live in Hudson County, the 31st, 32nd, 33rd district, it's solidly blue here. Okay, very much like the 30th legislative district. Like that's so red. But there are parts of the state that are winnable, especially and there are a lot of vulnerable incumbent Democrats that, if they're not careful, a good GOP candidate can sneak up and win a seat. But if they're not trying to push those candidates, then it seems like, we're content on, especially conservatives, right, are just content to say, well, Republicans will be in the minority for another 20 years. And that's just, I think that's being complacent and comfortable. You can't do that.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, everybody kept saying Georgia was solidly red. It went blue. And that wasn't due to voter fraud. Stacey Abrams, we talked about this in the past. Stacey Abrams worked very, very hard and had a long-term plan and have been working for years to turn that state blue. So I think we have to just stop saying that we have to stop ignoring areas because they're blue. I think, obviously you need a short-term plan. You have to start winning races, but some areas, I mean, you can have a long-term vision. You can turn it purple. Sometimes, and we talk about votes, you may not win it, but maybe you'll get more votes, and that's what's going to turn the tide statewide.
No, absolutely. And listen, and we talked about this off the air too, that, back in 2009, and they're very different candidates. But you know what? Chris Christie with the NJGOP did a much better, at least in my opinion, a much better outreach to Hispanics because guess what? Where Democrats have historically won 90% to 10%, you know what Christie was able to do? Again, irrespective of what we think about Chris after 8 years, we have our opinions. But in that fall of 2009, there were parts of the state where, guess what? Where usually it was like 90 to 10. Guess what? Democrats only won 65-35. And you know what? You do that enough, Maria, in certain counties and in certain districts, that's how you can shave into that lead, which again, Chris had to get every Republican out to vote for him, but he also won a lot of independents over during that campaign. And guess what? Even this is 12 years ago. He still only won by about, I think, 5 points. So that's how razor thin the margin is. And I think there isn't a sense of urgency, in my opinion, by the NJGOP when it comes to this election, where if there's ever a Democrat that's vulnerable, listen, back in 2009, John Corzine was atrocious. There are worse words I can use on the air, but I won't because obviously we have to keep this family friendly. You know what I'm saying? But Corzine was an atrocious governor. Murphy isn't. And
we've talked about that. And Murphy, I mean, he's been able to capitalize on the pandemic. Right now, I mean, he's the governor. And so we have unemployment issues. The vaccine rollout is not going to get an A+ rating. So there are so many issues within this particular administration that anyone can criticize. There's certainly an opportunity for Republicans. But again, I think one of the things that we're talking about for those that are listening and watching is that what we're experiencing is division within our party. It's one thing to be, constructively critical. We try and give insight where, hey, you know what, maybe focus on this area. But it's another when, at a time where we really need to come together, there's division if they really want to win. It's what's sad is, the Democrats, they're having primaries, they're having slight division, but for the most part, they're coming together. And that's in their favor. That's going to give them a better opportunity to win. But as a party, I mean, I think, and what you're talking about with operatives that come at us like we know nothing, I mean, what's their record? You're talking about a lot of people and where we've been consistently losing seats. We haven't been making gains. We've had some pockets where we've had some success. But for the most part, I think we need to be open to new ideas. We need to come together, and we have to realize that everyone contributes value. And when you had people that have had success, that have won, you know what? Let them help, use that opportunity to really, get more votes and to bring, galvanize whatever base, whatever area that you're trying. It just seems to me that we're not getting very fired up yet. And I'm hoping that changes if the Republicans, if they want to have success, they're going to need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, again, I'm not campaigning to be an operative or an advocate or a surrogate, but you and I are an incredible resource. And again, I'm not trying to inflate our own importance, but we are two very important resources in different ways, because you've won elections. Okay. I haven't won an election, but guess what? And what I've done in 4 years journalistically is more than I think a lot of other people, especially among Hispanics, where a lot of the issues I talk about resonate with Hispanic voters, Latinos, Latinas. Again, you said it before that, within Latin America, Maria, we tend to be not crazy conservative, but we tend to retain a lot of conservative leanings and upbringings, right, that we learn from our parents, that our parents learn from their parents. And that, again, we're not trying to become like, we're not trying to like go and pick it in front of an abortion clinic. No one's saying that. But what we're talking about is conservative ideas that still resonate within Hispanics. But if you don't articulate it in a way that it resonates with people, guess what? They'll stay home. Latinos and Latinos will stay home because they don't feel inspired. They're not going to feel emboldened to want to vote for either candidates. You know what I'm saying? And
absolutely. And it's not just our community as a, as a woman. That's a particular issue that concerns me. There's certainly been division recently within our party. The NJGOP did adopt a sexual harassment policy, which I applaud. But that certainly was from behind the scenes, from what I saw and from the people that spoke to me, a bit of a rough process and very difficult. Right now, we need all hands on deck, essentially. And it seems that there are some people that are starting to sow seeds of division. And so you have that every time. The Democrats have that right now, though they still have the numbers. They still have the numbers to win. They still have the competitive advantage. So, we can point the finger at them all they want, but we have to have our house together. Right now, they're still polling high. Right now, they're still more unified than we are. And right now, they have the advantage in the legislature and obviously in the executive with the governor. So,
absolutely.
If we're let's get our house together. And then, there's so many opportunities to really, when it comes to policy and everything, to attack. Even Tom Moran, your favorite, outlined all of the ways in which our current governor can be seen as deficient. He basically gave us an outline. And while some of the candidates are attacking that, and are pushing some of those issues, it hasn't resonated yet. So
No, you're right. You're right about that. And speaking of policy, you mentioned policy. Obviously, State Senator Loretta Weinberg, I know, who is retiring this year, is the head of the work group on harassment, sexual assault, and misogyny in New Jersey politics. It was formed, obviously, by State Senator Loretta Weinberg. But something that really bothered me about this week was, there was a Zoom meeting yesterday, though, Maria, about what this work group was going to discuss. And it just seems like it wasn't getting the press that it deserved. And again, I don't have any totals. I don't know what the views were for yesterday. I don't know how much they got through with their agenda. But it just seems that, listen, and kudos to Insider NJ, and maybe I'm a little, I'm openly biased here because I work with Insider NJ. Kudos to them for really publishing this, but it wasn't really talked about in other mainstream news apparatuses. It wasn't highlighted on NJ.com, the Asbury Park Press, NorthJersey.com. And I think that does a real disservice to what this work group is. And I know for you, this is something that really hits home for you because you've worked in government. You still have friends that work in government. And this work group, again, is designed to highlight, as the senator said, quote, this Texas political culture of New Jersey is turning women away. It seems like that's what's happening here. I think the work group should get more press. I'm disappointed that didn't happen this week.
Well, part of the issue was there wasn't enough time. This was something that was basically announced last minute.
Yeah.
So because it was a last minute group, I don't think that, because previously the press did really talk about the previous work groups meetings and everything. They did advertise it so that people would get involved. But this was one of those very last minute, saw it on Insider, hey, we're doing this tomorrow, or in like a day or two. Really not enough notice for a lot of people to be able to participate. I know that there were some people, myself, that would have loved to have been able to participate, but just wasn't, because it was just too last minute notice and couldn't change the schedule.
Yeah, you're right. And again, when we think about sort of like the platform or the mission statement of the work group, I mean, it really still highlights a very serious problem in New Jersey. We've talked about it on previous episodes where, listen, last year, due to the pandemic, we couldn't attend the League of Municipalities in Atlantic City. But you know what? Come hell or high water, good or bad, the League is always something that thousands of people in New Jersey look forward to, right? Operatives, lobbyists, elected officials, candidates, activists. And it seems like in recent years, it's gotten a really black eye and a sore eye because of a lot of the chicanery going on there that seems to get swept under the rug. And it's really tragic. And again, kudos to Senator Weinberg and that work group for bringing it to his attention. But at the end of the day, it's like this should be hammered home a lot, because I've heard some horrendous stories about the League for years now. And I know that you have a lot to say about that too.
Certainly. And they did come out with proposed legislation on how to address those issues, which I'm glad they're trying to do something. I'm personally not a fan of their legislation. I think that there's a lot of issues with it. And I think sometimes people have to realize, and Corin Frankenfurt wrote about it and posed a really great question. She's someone who is a Democrat who used to work in New Jersey, no longer works in New Jersey, but still very much involved with the Democrat Party, I believe up north in the Northeast. And she's one of those people that originally talked about the League of Municipalities and her experience with harassment there. And so she wrote an excellent op-ed about what she viewed as deficiencies within this proposed legislation. And one of the things that she posed was the question of, is it that the law, that we need more laws, or that we're not enforcing the law? And so one of the things that, you learn as a legislator is, one, you can't legislate culture. And sometimes, the laws are already there. The issue isn't we need another law. It's enforcing the laws that are already there. And working in the domestic violence space, where we're dealing with people that have experienced sexual assault, human trafficking, and just violence overall, one of the things that we see is the lack of enforcement. Sometimes the misunderstanding in law. Judges, some of the statements from judges are completely reprehensible. And it's not that there aren't laws there that's supposed to protect them. It's that they're not being enforced adequately to make those changes. So I think, if you haven't read it, anybody that's watching right now, go to Insider, look for her opinion piece on this particular legislation. And I believe Assemblywoman Holly Schapese put something else out recently. Somebody sent it to me. I didn't get to look at it. It was very brief, but it seemed pretty interesting. So it's great to see that, other women, Republicans, are out there and really trying to contribute to this issue. I believe the reception for her particular legislation was pretty positive.
Yeah. Well,
in trying to address it.
And this week,
we should probably acknowledge the passing of Senator Cardinale.
I was just about to talk about that. Yeah, but you know what? You beat me to it. Yeah. No, listen, you're right. We'll get to that in a moment, but just came back to Holly Shapese's piece this week. I mean, listen, that was really admirable of Holly to sort of come forward and talk about her own, experience with violence and what she's been victimized by in the past. So I think that was really admirable too. But speaking of Holly Shapese, I know you mentioned the passing of State Senator Cardinale. He's been a staple in the legislature for years in New Jersey, and very much as we look at other iconic, lions in the legislature, as they say, Cardinale left behind quite a legacy though, Maria. And I know that everyone up in Bergen County and those districts, I think, are sorely going to miss him because of his advocacy and everything else. But, you know, in your time in the legislature, did you have any experiences with Senator Connor now? Like, what can you tell us today, you know, from maybe interacting with him?
My experience was very brief, but you know, all I can say was he was somebody that was very well respected, and you know, it was, I mean, literally such a brief experience, super positive. He was just kind, polite, very respectful, and just very happy. And so, I unfortunately did not have the pleasure of working with him, but you know, my thoughts to his family, and you know, I think we're all grateful for his service to New Jersey.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Maria, getting back to the work group thing, you know, someone messaged me offline, I think after we talked about it on a previous episode, and someone just said to me, well, Fernando, you know what? The easiest way to fix that problem at the league is just to make the league dry. You make it dry, make everything dry over there, you're not going to have any problems anymore. I don't think it's that simple. I think that's a little oversimplification of someone. And again, I appreciate people reaching out to me and DMing me, but it's not that simple. It's not just, oh, let's make all the events dry. Let's make it a dry conference, a league of. I don't think it's about that. I just think that's really not still addressing the issues that are pervasive, though.
Exactly. I mean, people rape, people assault sober.
Yeah.
Not, you know, I think there's this assumption that everything that happens is because somebody's drunk. And while can be a contributing factor,
Yeah.
it's still not excusable. If somebody, you know, I think people have felt victimized or victim blamed for having been, you know, a little tipsy, drunk. That's still not an excuse to rape, to sexually assault or harass. It is not, you know, if, you know, it's funny. I remember one time we were at, you know, an after party with roller derby, and one of my teammates got pretty drunk. We were at this person's house, and you know what the guys did? They, the guys whose home this was, he helped bring her up to a room where nobody else was, put water, made sure she was laying on her side, put water by the bed, and shut the door so that nobody could go in. And because she was so drunk that she wasn't able, you know, nobody was going to put her in an Uber by herself.
Yeah.
You know, and to let her sleep it off. That's what he did. And that's what every person should do. You know, It's not an excuse to rape. It is not consent. And we need to stop blaming alcohol. You know, it's not like that song, Blame It on the Alcohol. No, it's not always because of alcohol. Yeah. A lot of times when people initiate violence against anybody, whether that's assault, physical assault, sexual, it's a power issue. It's not an anger management issue. It's not an alcohol issue. For the most part, it's a power issue. Yeah. And, you know, people have been sexually harassed in recently, Governor Cuomo has had allegations of sexual harassment by someone that works for him. They were in the workplace, perfectly sober. I think we have to stop blaming alcohol and stop saying that that's really the issue, because that's not, if you don't understand the problem, you're not going to be able to solve it. And it's a cultural issue. It's a power issue. And I think, you know, having more, I think really, it's not an easy solution. It's not a very specific, we just do this and it's fixed.
No, you're right about that. You're right. And again, you know, when you mentioned Corin Frankfurt's article on Insider, I mean, it still gets traffic because a lot of the points that she raises, and listen, again, I'm not trying to put Corin's business out there, but part of the reason is that she's working in New York is because she just got tired of the nonsense in New Jersey. Let's be honest. And I'm not doing this. I'm not saying that to be malicious. I think she would say that too. I think she's also put that in writing. And my heart goes out to her because, you know, she had quite a future here in New Jersey politics as an operative, you know what I'm saying? And because of like how sour she got, and rightfully so, she had to go across the river. And, you know, to the best of my knowledge, she's doing well up in New York State, I think working with the state Democratic Party. And you know what, listen, you know, it's something that it's unfortunate when you see something like that happen to a woman that is really invested politically, right? And has become a really good operative, to where now she's like, you know what? I don't want to work here anymore. I need to go across the river or go to another state because, quite frankly, it's toxic here in New Jersey. And she said that, you know what? And I feel for her. Like you can hear the despair about the toxicity in her writing, and it's tragic. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And this is something that is nonpartisan as well. This is something that affects people of both parties. It's not a political party issue. It's not Republicans are rapists or Democrats are rapists or anything like that. This is something where we've seen across the board. And I think that we have to acknowledge that and come together. This is a bipartisan issue. It's not a political issue. We can't keep politicizing it from a partisan perspective. This is an issue that really affects all people, and women sexually harassed as well. So this isn't just an issue. While it predominantly happens to women, women have been bad actors as well. I think there just has to be accountability when it comes to these particular issues.
No, I agree with you. Speaking about bipartisanship, or maybe a lack thereof, this week also, in the news cycle, after about 4 years of a saga, the governor and the legislature were able to finally piece it together and get a marijuana bill passed. And now, legal cannabis is a reality. I think, to the best of my knowledge, New Jersey is now the 13th state in the country to now legalize recreational marijuana for anyone over the age of 21. But Maria, again, and we've talked about this, like, I get it listen, I've worked in the criminal justice system before academia and in journalism, okay? So I worked in jails. I saw how draconian drug laws were. So I'm happy to see that Black and brown and white people, anybody, is no longer going to get arrested for possession of marijuana. And I know that the bill is still sort of unraveling. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm always concerned when I hear whether it's the governor or Democrats in the legislature saying, well, you know what? Now that it's legalized, it gets to be a revenue source. I mean, have we not learned, whenever we hear that language from people, going back to the 70s with the state income tax, it'll be a revenue source that'll help New Jersey. Or let's fast forward a few years ago, the gas tax, or raising tolls. It just seems like, regardless of who's in the executive branch, whether it's a Republican or Democrat, the legislature seems to sort of like foam at the mouth. Oh my God, we're going to have all this new revenue sources. And at the end of the day, I still don't trust them to do what's right by this bill, or for like using this revenue responsibly. It just seems like there's a lot of moving parts here that people aren't thinking about. And I'm a policy nerd. It freaks me out when I see people just being cavalier about it.
I think that you make some valid points. Obviously, that's a concern, and it should be a concern. And I think that's one thing that we all have to keep our eyes on is, again, accountability when it comes to any state money. That's been an issue. I think that Republicans, that's an issue consistently that we're constantly complaining about. I remember saying this when I first ran. We talk about New Jersey being the garden state, but that we don't grow money trees. But from a positive standpoint, there is an ecosystem that builds up around legalization. So while, yes, you're bringing up very valid points, some things to consider. And I think that while there has to be, obvious consideration, I think there are towns right now that have 6 months to rezone. Some of them have already have made zoning ordinances to exclude recreational marijuana retail outlets from being sold or from any facilities in their town. But the thing is, in Colorado, one of the things that they saw was there was a whole ecosystem, whole economy that grew around it. It wasn't just the retail; those are jobs. In a state where there's high unemployment right now, I believe we're at 10% due to the pandemic. We have high unemployment. These are jobs. And it's not just jobs working in a facility, growing marijuana or selling it. There are jobs that go around it: security, delivery services. There are so many businesses that grow around legalization. And there's an opportunity to really cancel out the black market. I do have issues with this bill, the lack of home grow, other things. I think that it is going to be difficult for certain people to really get into the game, but there's still an opportunity. But there are things that are good for the economy. And I think towns do really need to reconsider when it comes to zoning. You can have, retail, home grow, all of these outlets within your community and have it so that it's safe. You can invest in education for minors so that you don't have to, you can keep it away from, schools. Most of these communities, you can have it somewhere where, you're still protecting the culture and of your community while, having the service that's creating jobs. And I think that's the big thing. There's a real opportunity to create jobs and to grow the economy that right now is pretty stagnant in New Jersey.
No, you're right. And just a couple of things here, just to share with the audience in terms of, it's been legalized, but you can't buy it legally yet. And one of the things the bill highlights is, right now there are over 100,000 patients registered with the medical marijuana program. And according to the bill, again, according to the language, is should the medical dispensaries, be able to supplement all of the necessary prescriptions to their patients, then those dispensaries can proceed with selling it legally, for recreational use. And Maria, my issue, and you just brought up right now, it's about space. Up here where I live in Hudson County, you've seen how densely populated it is, okay? And, down by you, it's a lot more real estate, right? Parts of South Jersey, the only medical dispensary here in Hudson County, for example, is in Secaucus. It's easily accessible to the Turnpike, Parkway, Route 1 and 9, whatever. The bottom line is that there's no guarantee that even all the patients in that dispensary are being serviced accordingly. So my biggest fear is, oh yeah, there's this rush, there's this urgency. Oh yeah, let's make sure we get the patients, serviced. But then you know what? Hey, if we can do this, then we can start selling it, legally too, on a recreational level. And I think that sort of urgency or that sort of rush, I think that could be a recipe for disaster. And again, I sort of fault the legislature because it's like, these are things that, again, it passed in November by overwhelming margin. It's not like it was a razor thin margin. All right. It was 67% to 33%. Since that time, you would think that the legislature would have been working on this almost night and day because it's going to be an issue. It's going to be a revenue stream. Think about it. New York and Pennsylvania don't have that. New Jersey's now going to be like that center. I mean, not like we do.
Absolutely. And Colorado faced that. I was one of the original legislators, that delegation that went to Colorado to learn more about their legalization process, their successes, their pitfalls, and there's a lot of things that they talked about in terms of policy that they felt they did right. And if they could do it over again, how they would course correct. There was a very lengthy discussion. Not every legislator was present for some of those panels and meetings. Yeah. But the thing is, there's a framework. There are other states that have done it. And when you have kind of that, established, other people have done it. When you have that history there, I mean, you would think it would be easier to see what they did and craft policy that's suitable for your state and region. So, it is a bit concerning right now. They've already made the final appointments to the regulatory commission. That's going to be the rulemaking body when it comes to legalization and, recreational retail growing, basically seed to sale. And from the recreational sense. And so I think we are definitely going to have to pay attention to who these people are that have been appointed to this commission, their background and experience, what they contribute, and what they come up with when it comes specifically to this. I mean, these aren't volunteers. They're being paid to come up with the rules and how this is going to happen. Medical marijuana was stalled. There was a lawsuit, and there's licenses that finally it's finally cleared. So I believe they're issuing 11 additional medical marijuana licenses. So we'll see how that works, if that'll help. I don't see any retail outlets, popping up in the next month or so. So there's time to hopefully create a process in New Jersey that's safe and, comfortable for everyone. But
you're right. And again, my biggest concern is that it reminds me how dysfunctional Trenton can be because, again, it's legal. You just can't buy it legally yet. And in the meantime, the black market will continue to flourish. I mean, I'm glad we're going to not arrest people. We're not, obviously, Attorney General Grewal has instructed municipal prosecutors to say, hey, whatever outstanding cases you have, drop them. That's great because, again, I've seen firsthand, teaching in higher ed, the impact that can have on anyone, right? much less college kids who could have their lives ruined because of these marijuana arrests. But then also too, I think, I don't know about like down by you, I'm not sure how it is ordinance wise, but up here in Hudson County though, Maria, my biggest issue is, there are a lot of municipalities, and this is going back some years because maybe they saw the writing on the wall. There are municipalities up here that have just created ordinances outright like, hey, we're not going to allow for any recreational dispensaries to open up shop here. Where I live in Union City, Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack and the Board of Commissioners passed an ordinance. I know in Weehawken, right next door. I know in North Bergen. These are three big towns in Hudson County where, we were right across from Manhattan. So New Jersey's going to become that haven between New York and Pennsylvania where people just say, hey, we can score weed legally. Let's go to Jersey. It seems like another big challenge is going to be a lot of municipalities. There was a list, I think, last summer via the Star Ledger that there were a lot of towns down the shore and in South Jersey that were passing ordinances like, hey, at some point, weed will be available recreationally and legally, but you know what? Not in our town, and we're not going to change that. I think
I'm sorry, I'm going to be critical. I think that's a bad decision.
I agree.
It's one, we have to step away from the reefer madness. A lot of we have to step away from that attitude because it's been disproven. And also, we're not reinventing the wheel here. Other states have been able to roll it out. There are studies on what they've done, how it's impacted their communities. There's so much information out there, that we can utilize to ensure that the process in New Jersey is safe, okay, and effective. That's why we elect these legislators to craft policy, but that it's safe and effective. It's not, New Jersey has spoken. They overwhelmingly voted to legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
Some of these towns that are saying not here, anywhere but here, their residents voted in support of it overwhelmingly. This is an opportunity when it comes to jobs, when it comes to revenue. Obviously you pose really, really great concerns when it comes to revenue for New Jersey and how it's going to be used, if there's going to be any responsibility there. But there are real opportunities here to essentially course correct. There are people that have been negatively impacted by criminalization of marijuana. And there's this narrative that is just false when it comes to marijuana as this gateway drug. Honestly, we've already seen the biggest gateway drug that has adversely impacted our communities tremendously. Literally destroyed communities' lives has been going to your doctor after a surgery, or going to your dentist. It has been big pharma, okay? Yeah. When it comes to the opiate epidemic. So you know what? I'm kind of over the reefer madness narrative. There's enough information out there. We can do this responsibly. Towns that are saying not here are putting themselves in a situation where they're not creating jobs, they're not creating ratables for their community, and hey, invest in DARE programs. Growing up, and I think the thing too is with the assumption of legalization, it's like everybody thinks that, well, now that it's legal, we're all going to do it. The studies show that that's not the case. People that used it before are going to continue to use it. If anything, people that used it from before from other states are going to come into your state and continue to use it, but they're not going to, people that don't want to use it, that haven't used it, they're not all of a sudden going to wake up and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And there are studies when it comes to how it impacts minors. And so I think we have all of these resources there to, again, do this the right way. And I think there are things that we need to focus on now. Now it's going to be, we're going to have to look at the enforcement side when it comes to driving. There are so many things that we're going to have to look at that we need to focus on. So, towns, I think that I'm personally one of those people. I was a proponent of legalization, and, I stand by that. I think there, again, is an opportunity for, to really grow the economy in New Jersey.
No, I agree with you. And listen, one of the biggest things I was happy about was just the fact of now via the law that Attorney General Gawal was instructing all municipal prosecutors to drop cases. Because
Yeah.
listen, up here in North Jersey, especially in Hudson County, I think a lot of municipal departments weren't as punitive when it came to like marijuana arrests or possessions. But and again, I'm not saying this to be like an a-hole to anyone living down the shore of South Jersey, but we all know police departments down in Central Jersey, South Jersey, down the shore are very different than up here. They tend to be a lot more punitive. They like to be, they tend to be a lot more usurpacious and draconian in the way that they enforce laws. And at the end of the day, it becomes just really, really bothersome and invasive. And we all know about this. And in that sense, I'm glad to see that the Attorney General immediately instructed municipal prosecutors, hey, drop these cases. Don't bother anymore with prosecutions. You know what? It's a waste of time, resources, and personnel where we could better allocate it to something more serious, like hardcore drugs. Like people, again, I've never smoked marijuana. I don't care to, but people aren't committing robberies, Maria. They're not committing burglaries and carjackings and assaults on marijuana. They're committing burglaries and assaults and carjackings for opioids, for crack, for cocaine. That's where our resources should be focused on. I don't understand why that's so difficult for people to process.
Again, reefer madness.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's people still operate on that narrative. But again, this is a real, and for those people that are concerned that they're, just like with medical marijuana, that you're really going to have to, be one of, it's like the haves and have-nots. You have to know somebody, you have to have that political sway or whatever. You have to be connected with a business that's already well established. Some people said it's going to be big tobacco and everything. There are so many opportunities outside of gaining a license to have a retail or even seed to sale to grow. To really capitalize on legalization. So for all those people out there with that entrepreneurial spirit, go look to Colorado, go look to states that have legalized it. What ancillary businesses have cropped up in security, even just, consulting. There are DARE programs, police, law enforcement at some point is going to be burdened. There's an opportunity there for those to help teach the impact of drug awareness, so that you're when it comes to minorities and minors, when it comes to minors, educating them properly. There's so many different things that will crop up around. There's just a really, really great opportunity again in terms of jobs. Growing businesses. There are people that have lost their businesses during this pandemic. There's just so much there that can be done. And so I think rather than looking at all the negatives, I think we can start focusing on at least there's an opportunity there. So start focusing on the positives and ways to really capitalize.
No, I agree with you. We'll get to some legislative races that are interesting for you right now. But before that, Maria, I'll give you the floor first, but we're approaching a year that we're living under the pandemic, and it's been a challenge for so many of us. What's something you want to share with us tonight that you're really proud of overcoming in this year? Again, that we've been under this pandemic, and we've been affected in so many ways, whether it be mental health, whatever, economics, whatever. What are you really proud of overcoming in this year under the pandemic?
The one thing that I would say it was an absolute positive was more time with my family.
Okay. Fair enough.
Honestly, we can talk about overcoming or whatever, but when I think back of this pandemic, I certainly grew closer to my kids, and that's been really great.
You know what? I'm with you on that. I would say spending time with my family too. I've been someone that's always been like a social butterfly, especially up here where I was always out. I was always out during the week. I was out on weekends a lot, and being able to just bond again with my parents and bond again with my immediate family. I think that was extremely therapeutic. I think it was helpful for us. Especially last summer. The day after my birthday, losing my grandmother. She was 102 years old. That was such a punch in the gut to all of us. And I think that we were home. We were together. I think, we were such a great resource to each other because it was a tough time. I'm Cuban. Like my grandmother was my world, she raised me when I was a kid. I was so attached to her, and losing her, it really messed me up. I mean,
Mhm.
I've never really suffered depression, but if I ever had to say, hey, I know what depression may feel like, it was probably like a week or so after her death. Like, I was really depressed and down. Like, thank God, I wasn't self-destructive or anything, but my God, I said, I can't imagine people that have lost, loved ones during this pandemic, and like maybe some of them weren't as, constructive. Maybe some of them became self-destructive, and it's really harmed so much in terms of mental health that, it's just something that, again, my heart goes out to everybody, because I think everyone's been affected differently.
Everybody has. I've certainly had issues with mental health, and I've had a lot of obstacles this year that have impacted me greatly, and I've been able to get through them. And so right now, I just really try and focus on the positive, and I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that even right now, here I am talking to you, and we get to talk about things that we like to talk about. So,
Oh, absolutely, no, absolutely.
and people are, listening to some extent or watching maybe a little bit.
We're getting good traffic, and obviously the people that don't that claim or maybe say to others, oh, they're not listening to us, they are watching us, obviously, because our traffic obviously says otherwise. Maria, a couple legislative races. I want to get your thoughts on this, because I know that Jesse Kurtz, a councilman in Atlantic City, is running for one of the state assembly seats. I think that district down there, I think that's winnable, where Republicans, I think if they're aggressive like they're being, let's say with Jesse Kurtz, they can pick up some seats. I think they can shave a little bit of that margin in the state assembly, where Democrats have a pretty big lead. I think someone like Jesse Kurtz in Atlantic City, down in that district, down in Atlantic County, I think they can pull off some upsets there.
Oh, absolutely. I think they have some really great candidates running legislatively, and I think that there's, obviously an opportunity. Senator Chris Brown is retiring, but he has been successful there. He's a Republican. He's won several times. He's been outspent, won. So that district is certainly a winnable district for Republicans. And so they have really, really strong, great candidates. And I think that have some really strong name recognition. I personally like Jesse Kurtz, councilman there. And I think that there's in my mind, it's almost like it's theirs to lose,
Yeah, no, that's right.
They are a really great slate. There's a really great opportunity there. So we'll see what happens, but I hope that they have success. I hope that they're able to really capitalize on their name. These are, the people that are running are people that kind of followed what Senator Chris Brown did, which was he was really in his district. He was constantly advocating for people in his district. He was constantly boots on the ground. And I think when you have that mentality, when you have that outreach and you're always engaged, you have more opportunity for success.
No, absolutely. I'm hearing some whispers, though, that down in, I believe, LD1, that, in Trenton, that, the State Democratic Committee really would like to get Mike Testa out of there. I think Mike Testa has really risen since taking office. He's been a vocal person in the legislature, especially, being a thorn in Governor Murphy's side. I'm hearing some whispers that, the State Democratic Committee really wants to go after Testa and maybe try to take him out. I think he's built a really good ground game for some time, which is what resulted in his win to begin with.
That district and South Jersey is pretty Republican leaning. Yeah. And so he, when you think of the candidates that were there before, they voted Republican for the most part. They were Democrat, they were team when they had to be when it came to the Democrat Party. But for the most part, they were conservative leaning. And so that's always been a very conservative leaning area and district. And so I think, he did a really great job. Again, outreach. He's constantly campaigning, and that's not to say that he's inauthentic. He's absolutely authentic. But what I mean is that he's constantly engaging in his district. He is always out and about. He is, he never stops. And I think that the Democrats, if they really want to target that district, I mean, that's something they're going to have to do in the long term. But in the short term, I don't see them being successful at all.
Listen, I'm with you.
If anything, I think it would be better strategy just to focus on, other districts.
Listen, I'm with you. And I think that would be, again, I'm sure the state committee will run someone because they want to. and they feel they have to. But, in terms of how realistic it is, it seems like it's a pretty safe district that'll stay with.
I agree. And I mean, I really have an immense amount of respect for Senator Testa.
Yeah,
We joke around about where we disagree. But this is somebody that's really supportive, even though he's very conservative leaning, certainly has a very open tent mentality, isn't just trying to, run his district and represent the people of his district, but he's also trying to grow the party. And he's really great with outreach throughout the state and trying to recruit people, whether they're center right or super conservative. He's really just trying to get Republicans engaged, involved, excited. He's somebody that's he's gotten me excited about politics again. He is very engaging, and so I certainly would like to see him stay there. Again, we don't always agree.
yeah.
But the great thing is I feel that he's somebody that I can contact and say, I don't agree with this. And and every time it's been respectful discourse, and, he's brought up really, really great valid points, and it's just been a great conversation. And, I think I think personally, he's doing a great job in representing his district.
No, he is.
And the views of his district.
No, he is. He definitely is. And before we wrap up here tonight, and folks, again, I want to thank you in advance for joining us here on the latest episode of Maria and Fernando Talking Jersey. Obviously, you can see the show in its entirety right after we go off the air. The replay will be available there. We do ask that everyone please share it. The traffic has been great since we started this in January. It was a very ambitious project to start doing this show together because of our experiences. But Maria, I have to tell you, I'm enjoying our time here on a bi-weekly level. Believe it or not, people are like, hey, you should be doing this more often. You know what? I'm always concerned about overkill. I think I like the flow we have right now because, you know what? We're examining issues that matter to us and also to a lot of people that reach out to us too, right? Whether it's operatives or people on social media. I'm just grateful that this program's taken off the way it has. It's getting attention and it's ruffling some feathers. And you know what? As someone who loves to ruffle feathers and piss people off daily, I think we're doing the job we're supposed to do with this show, Maria.
Well, from a positive aspect,
Yeah.
I think it's great to see the comments. People, please keep commenting. Give us some of your critiques. Some of them are really great. I always love Dawn Fantasia. She is in Somerset, Freeholder. Yes, I always love her comments. She brings so many really great valid points. It's always great to read after, like, oh, good one. And so that's always really great. And what? Actually, I do want to say, I want to give a little shout out to her, and a shout out to Deb Palumbi. She's a Burlington County Republican, and she's always constantly supportive, watching this show. And, we've actually had people overseas. I have a friend in London that has watched several times. So hi, Julia. I don't know if you're watching today. You're probably in bed, but thank you, because she's a liberal. And so she'll bring up points on the Democrat side. And so she's always bringing up great points and engaging and reaching out to me about the show and watching it. So just wanted to quickly say thank you to them for being so supportive and to always, engage positively with their comments and give really great ideas.
Listen, I think, you hit it out of the ballpark with that one. And listen, I would share the same thing because I've had people reach out to me and say, listen, what you and Maria are talking about is a lot of the things that we discuss, at the dining room table or in our living rooms at home, but no one's really articulating the way you guys are, the way the two of you are expressing your views in a way that's constructive, in a way that's helpful, and, some people may disagree and say, well, we're not being nice enough. We're not here to be nice, Maria. We're here to be fair. We're here to talk about things that matter. If politics didn't matter to us, we wouldn't be doing this. We'd be doing something else with our Friday nights.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's pretty much true. But it does suck that we're so limited in time. I think there's certain things that we didn't get to that people need to watch. There's the race right now, the dynamics that are happening between Assemblywoman Valerie Veneeri-Huddle and Assemblyman Gordon Johnson. There's a Democrat primary there. And so if you haven't been paying attention, pay attention. That's certainly going to be an interesting race if you're interested in races. And as well as with Wicker, it looks like he's, getting some backing to run for Senate in that area. That his district, the number escapes me, but his district is formerly Jack Ciattarelli's district. And I remember that being a Republican district. So that's certainly interesting. You know, there are a lot of districts that used to be Republican districts that have turned blue. And so I think, you know, Republicans need to start paying attention in those districts because there might be an opportunity to win there again. You know, the candidates or the representatives from the Republican side that used to be there were really great. And obviously one of them's running for governor. Another one was Assemblywoman Donna Simon, who's truly wonderful. And so I really, you know, she was somebody that didn't get enough credit for some of her legislation that she proposed. I can't say how many bills that she put out there that were basically co-opted by Democrats because she had really great ideas and she really cared about the community. So.
Well, folks, again, these are the issues we'll keep talking about, and we're going to keep shedding light on all the interesting legislative races. Obviously, what Governor Murphy needs to do with this election cycle, what his Republican challengers need to do this Republican, you know, this cycle as well. We'll be talking about that and much more in the coming weeks as we continue to, again, bring you Maria and Fernando Talking Jersey right here via StreamYard, via Facebook Live. Folks, have a great weekend. And Maria, anything else before we go off the air?
No, just, you know what? Yes. Before we go off the air, send us your comments. Tell us your ideas. You know, if you're a candidate, don't get mad. We're just trying to give fair analysis, you know, the best that we can for those that are watching. But you know what? Thank you for running. We think you're all great. And but if all the people that are there watching, you know, let us know what you want us to talk about. Are there issues that we're not highlighting? Are there races that we're not talking enough about? Let us know.
You know what? For any candidates that want to come on with us, we'll welcome anybody here. You want to come? You want to get in the hot seat? Take our question.
Let us interview you. We make no promises, but let us interview you.
Absolutely. So again, folks, have a great weekend. Stay safe. Again, enjoy the rest of your February. Again, daylight savings time is only a couple weeks away, so the days will get longer and the weather gets warmer. Thanks for everyone for joining us here. On behalf of Maria Rodriguez-Gregg, New Jersey's premier advocate, I'm Fernando Uribe, New Jersey's premier journalist, saying so long. Have a happy weekend. Stay healthy, and we'll see you next time right here on Talking Jersey.